Start your engines, everybody, and get ready to ride shotgun with Dr. Doug Cifranick, our guest of honor, a veterinarian who's not just in the fast lane of high tech, but he's also one of Digitail's earliest adopters and longtime friends, if I can say that too, Doug.
I could tell.
Revving up, yeah, revving up, hold on, the puns aren't done. Revving up our engines together, Dr. Doug and Digitail have been cruising down the highway of innovation from the get-go. We have grown together, we've taken detours, navigated bumps, and celebrated milestones. It's a road trip like no other, and marked by mutual support and some serious cheerleading from the sidelines as well. But wait, let's see if we can get that muted. Perfect. Okay, so first we're going to talk about horsepower. Dr. Doug doesn't just use the latest gadgets, supercharges his practice with cutting edge tech that leaves the typical mobile vet practice pain points in the rear view. But wait, there's also a fork in this road. High tech doesn't just stop with devices and software, it's also about revving up the team so that everyone can be firing on all cylinders. Dr. Doug's technicians aren't just riding shotgun, they're behind the wheel, performing their own appointments to increase reach while also driving client retention and accelerating revenue. So buckle up because we are about to explore this double-edged brilliance of high tech in a turbocharged session. From tech savvy tools to setting a course of empowering technicians to steer towards success, Dr. Doug's approach is like a well-oiled machine, purring all the way to the finish line. And trust us, with a vet like him in the driver's seat, you're in for a ride that's more thrilling than a lap at the racetrack. No need to pump the brakes. Let's shift gears and dive right in.
Shit.
Welcome, Dr. Doug, and thank you for taking the time to chat with us. Why don't you start things off by telling everyone a bit about the journey that led you to starting your mobile practice, WoofDoctor On Wheels?
Yeah, well, thank you for that introduction. That was fun. Very punny. So as all of you may have obviously heard, I'm Dr. Douglas Cifranick, Dr. Doug, as most people end up calling me, or Dr. C for those clients that can't remember that last name. I started veterinary journey. Many of us do. Little kid, growing up. I mean, I always thought that's what I wanted to do, and kind of took some devious routes here and there, and dabbled into the human medicine side for a while. But most of my basis grew up in that large animal world. And eventually deciding that school is what I wanted to do, I ended up actually heading off to Ireland for veterinary school. So all those James Herriot fans out there, I guess, like many of us, it shapes some of your goals and thoughts and dreams. And, so eventually got out of vet school, and I was lucky enough to get an opportunity pretty early on to run a practice in Beaufort, South Carolina, where I live now, in a typical brick and mortar setting. And ran that for about 5 years. Had some personal health issues, dealt with some cancer and things, and kind of changed my perspective and on life and work and so many things. But as that happened right at the beginning of COVID, so on top of change that everybody obviously has dealt with, kind of pivoted and wanted to do something different, look at something different. And out of that, kind of spawned WoofDoctor On Wheels. I was lucky enough at the time to be able to start in a community that I was at least semi-familiar with, and lucky enough to have a very, very strong technician that I had worked with for a very long time, Jessica Lee, that had promised at that point, if you ever do anything, I want to come along. And it kind of spawned the idea of what we do today.
Nice. Thank you. I actually just read Jessica's bio on your website, which I would highly recommend. I love your staff bios, the Meet the Team. And I love that in Jessica's, it mentions that she and I believe it was her brother were in cahoots, like bringing in stray animals and hiding them from her parents, which I think everyone can relate to.
Yeah, we definitely try and use that section a little bit to kind of give our clients some insight where they can, more so than maybe just this typical like Indeed style bio, but kind of make it as fun as we can for them as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one thing, I know we kind of already touched on your technician-driven focus, but can you kind of go more in depth? Why don't we start with how WoofDoctor is different from other mobile practices?
So as we started this thing, as we tried to get it off the ground, we but one of my big focuses was trying to find a way to highlight Jessica and to, I'll say the biggest concern I probably had was how I could pay Jessica what she was worth, and figuring out ways to do that. And so we spawned a lot of ideas from there. And what therefore came from that, as we kind of formed this mobile practice, was the goal always being it kind of almost circling around the technicians, or almost being technician focused, and making them a critical component of our team, more so than just being involved in the appointments or kind of acting as that assistant, but really being part of that provider network, provider team, and almost that highlighting a way to get them as a middle, kind of mid-level practitioner of sorts. Obviously within the guidelines of, state board regulations and things, but finding those ways to empower them to do that. And so as we've grown this team, and as we've really started to develop things, we've always been trying to create an environment where they would become the center of it long term. And so that's probably the biggest thing that we do a little different than a lot of other folks.
So one thing that I did want to also touch on is the, I guess, technology aspect. So it's not just enough to empower your technicians, set them up so that they can kind of do the most that they are capable of doing, but you also have to arm them with the right tools.
Yeah. So we started, when we started this thing, we have a 26-foot LeBoy that we got all kitted out and teched out. And I was actually able to get an older unit to make the cost of entry into startup a little better, a little easier, and just kind of retrofit it and get it, I guess spooled up to today's standards, new X-ray, with wireless plate, and we have a handheld ultrasound, and we've got a Baxis lab equipment in there, and all of those tools. And so we started with that. But the whole premise of this, I think that's actually, my truck in the driveway. We use home as base. The driveway has been redone for the full team of people we now have. But yeah, so that was kind of the start. But then we essentially wanted to always get to these smaller units that we could, I guess, tech out for our techs, and really put kind of the same tools that I would use and depend on in their hands. And so we have kind of created our first little technician team kind of minivan. We've got a Dodge ProMaster City that we've got completely kitted out for her. We've got, we have an OnCure digital ultrasound in there for her. We have one of the companion Pegasus lasers in there for her. She's got her own centrifuge. She's got cardiac ultrasound tables. She's actually doing cardiac training for her ultrasounds today, probably as we speak. And we try and put as much of that tech as we can. I think we've got the Firefly otoscope in there for her, video otoscope. We've got Clearview 2, a digital ophthalmoscope in there for her, and it really empowers her to run her own technician consults. And we kind of use her predominantly as a major extension of my ability to treat for our clients and be that tool. I can be booked out 2 or 3 weeks in advance. And what it allows is for me to get Jessica there often, maybe same day, often next day. And she's kind of the center point for all of our urgent, non-emergent appointments. So when I say urgent, non-emergent, it puts a lot of those technical aspects in her hand to allow me to get the information I need to treat from afar. And so she can go in and ask all the right questions, and obviously run those histories and run her own appointments, and then gather information with those tools, allow me to diagnose from afar and institute a treatment plan. And then she's actually already on site with all the tools she needs to initiate a treatment plan, and the entire time developing that relationship with those owners where she's the center focus of it and the center point. And I'm just the guy that they call for a minute after I get a chance to analyze things. And it really highlights her for our practice.
That's great. I'm going to actually share a slide. You had sent over a list of the tech team services and also the tech that supports them in those services. So I'll share just a screenshot of that so you can see all of the things that Jessica's out there capable of doing. I think one of the things that I did want to talk about is how Digitail is supporting this for you. I know we had talked about sending notes and information back and having that cloud-based system really being integral and being able to access it anywhere to be able to support this type of tech forward philosophy.
Yeah, so obviously digital for us is a core component to us pulling this off. For the fact right now that we're able to update things live in 2 different locations. We operate over about 4 counties at the moment. And so for us to be in all these different locations and have up-to-date files on hand, instantaneously is fantastic. I'm able to get lab results instantaneously to me on a handheld on my phone as I'm in an appointment. I'm able to get alerts through from Jessica. She's able to put in the findings that she has, and I can do full note review, very quickly with just looking at brief overviews of everything that she's done. She kind of integrates text plays in with it for us. And so she's able to kind of create like standard tech protocols. And then she has her own, set templates that she's able to utilize. So it's easy for me to access. She can put any information. And as I view all of that, again, it kind of just helps us streamline and be concise throughout all of it. And then let alone now the new fun. And like I said, I'd even ask if what we were allowed to, but the AI component to this has really started accelerating the efficiency on this for us. I'm super excited about the AI component of things. Obviously, I'm on that AI team with y'all. But it is amazing at its ability to give me, the critical highlights in super timely fashion, let alone my ability to multitask in so many levels, considering how we do this. And our hands are constantly in a couple different buckets, working with her in the field and her doing the same thing. It's helped her be able to pull recommendations from me when I ask for specific information, or as she's trying to do calculations, it ends up being, that nice double check for her to make sure that she's on track. Based on us doing treatments kind of live. And so it fills in the gaps, and so many gaps, and prevents us from kind of dropping the ball as we try and be as efficient as we can here, utilizing her.
Yeah. So for anyone who does not know, Dr. Doug is referring to Tails, our AI empowered vet assistant that is integrated right into Digitail. Has not been released widely yet, but Dr. Doug is part of our beta design testing team. So it's great to hear that it's making a huge difference. And AI is all over the place. So it's nice to know that it is helpful, and having it integrated directly into the PIMS is really ideal because that's exactly where you're spending all of your time doing your work. So it makes a huge difference. And I know that you had mentioned yesterday that you were using the voice to text feature as well and having some fun with that.
Yeah, I really like that, especially being mobile. For us, it highlights a really nice ease of use. I actually have it set up in my truck where I have like a Google Chromebook set up in my truck directly to my right with a handheld microphone that I can actually hook in. And so as I'm able to just tap the screen, I'm able to record snippets as I drive. To that when I stop after an appointment and things are fresh, I'm able to keep it up. And Jessica can do the same. She actually has an assistant in the truck with her daily. And we actually have that assistant driving. So Jessica's able to utilize that same premise as they get back out of appointments. She's able to use those voice snippets as well, and then be able to copy those directly into the soaps as needed. And so it makes it really nice and easy for me to be able to, again, jot thoughts down and get them sent over to her, or vice versa, let alone fill out our notes. Obviously, the audio component of that makes life really simple. So.
Yes, no, that's great. And that should be available hopefully in the coming month, I would say, but stay tuned for updates for those who are not in the design partner group. And technology is advancing so quickly. It's insane how fast the human healthcare field has kind of embraced all of this technology, and the veterinary field kind of plods along a little bit further behind. But I think that especially with the mobile philosophy and bringing the vet care to the client, that you almost rely more so on cloud-based software and all of these technological advancements to support the work that you're doing.
Yeah, we couldn't do what we do without it. It's such a critical aspect. It's not just ease of use. It's core functionality. It's what empowers us to do what we do. Without it, trying to do some sort of paperwork. I would not be able to set up this technician team. Jessica would not be capable of doing what she's currently doing, because there'd be no way for me to relay that information in an efficient manner. And it truly sets our team up to allow her to do what we envisioned as we built this thing. Yeah, I mean, the component I kind of want to jump back to on her, as we talked about setting her up, and we had kind of skipped over it a little bit, but I think you had shown up that list of the services that we have for her at the moment, which is ever growing and changing. Like I said, she's actually doing cardiac ultrasound training today with Oncura to be able to start offering that, not just for us, but for even outside clinics, is what we're really trying to get her set up as. So she'll not only be a technician for us, but a service and a usable mid-level practitioner, again, per se, and the kind of the hands for these other docs, so that they're able to refer out to her, get these ultrasounds done, and then we can send it directly to a board certified radiologist. But she's the skilled hand that allows this to happen. And I kind of mentioned that she does our urgent non-emergence, the list that we had here, and as I had seen it, she also is not only a mid-level practitioner and kind of gets the ownership of having her own clients and mastering her own skills and her own crafts, but she's a huge recruitment tool for us. And part of that is that, she can only offer, there's certain things she can only offer if clients are not active with us. Right. And so empowering her to do that, it's very enticing for our clients. As she's going out there, maybe just starts with a nail trim or some ear cleanings, or anal gland expressions, or things that, are technician skills for sure, and things that a lot of assistants and things can do, and definitely fall below the scope of her licensure and training, but are part of what she offers. But then when they can see all the stuff that she's able to do, and in the presence of their own home, it definitely opens them up to being, essentially interested in bringing us on as a whole. And so now her also driving around in a, well-marked technician team vehicle is a fantastic recruitment tool. I mean, we have done very limited, very, very limited marketing in the local area, and we are consistently booked out weeks in advance. And she's now, we're to a point where we're gonna have to replicate probably what she's doing and have a second team to our one doc, because she's gotten so busy with all that she's offering, and the interest that people have had with her and what she can do for them.
Mm-hmm. She's like literally getting a foot in the door for WoofDoctor On Wheels.
I mean, yeah, everywhere that she goes, it's she's our best advertisement, for sure.
Mm-hmm. And I just want to bring up your Facebook page as well, your social media marketing, because I am a huge fan. I am a top fan actually of your page, because it's so entertaining. You have so much content on there because you're just out on the road, you're interacting with your clients. You had the bearded dragons dressed up with Jessica the other day.
That was purely Jessica's interest. Those are two of our bearded dragons that I have, and she loves it. And again, she gets to have fun. And yeah, she gets to do some of that creative, some of that ownership component of things. She had a break. I think she had a 30-minute later start that morning and said, I've got an idea. I'm going to do some things for social media. I said, go have fun. And I saw photos later, and she had done an entire princess photo shoot with both the male bearded dragons. It was pre-Barbie, ironically, but they probably could have been in every one of those promo videos, as she had them in the technician team doing things in their tutus and doctor jackets and all of the fun. So yeah, they tend to try to have a really fun time as well as part of their group, because they get to own their day, and they get a lot of ownership in what they do and freedom in their schedule, and it allows for them to have that kind of fun culture to this whole thing as well.
Mm-hmm. I believe that it would give a lot of job satisfaction, having that ownership and having that relationship with her own clients, essentially. I mean, I know that you could potentially replicate that in a brick and mortar practice, having that same type of relationship. But I feel like, going to the home and having her be so empowered and having her have control, like you said, over her day, would give such a sense of fulfillment to a technician.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, there's so many ways to do this. Like, we're doing this in one fashion, but, I've envisioned this in so many different ways. Obviously, I ran a brick and mortar for a long time, and obviously state by state, there's so many different rules and things you have to follow. And obviously what we've built kind of just is built in the parameters of what South Carolina currently allows. And regardless of my view on that. And I'm going to try and do what I can to help, work to change some of those things. Again, I think they sell her short on things she's allowed to do and not allowed to do. And yeah, if you got me down that road, I'd be there for an hour. But I think, even just like you said, in a brick and mortar, yeah, I mean, obviously the current market, the current job market is really hard. It's really competitive. Veterinarians can be super scarce. I was telling my wife the other day, like the current offerings that these new vets are getting come out of vet school were, things I didn't see till my 5th or 6th year, because everybody is doing what they can to try and grab somebody right out of school, regardless of if they're going to need, significant mentoring and some crazy busy practice. And because veterinarians are so hard to find, and it's so hard to find and keep really good support staff, including our technicians. And it's, I think the difference is that there's so many of these technicians that aren't in practice. I mean, you're an example of one, that it's so hard to have retention when the ceiling, at least in the classic model, is so low. From a financial component, there's obviously always job satisfaction and continuing to learn and continuing to do things, but from a financial progression, it's very limiting for a lot of these technicians. And I think, I read a statistic. It's like the average technician is currently in practice for 5 years. They go to school, maybe do a 2-year associates or do some sort of associates with a bachelor's combined, and they're gone from practice 5 years later. And so we're not able to retain most of the best talent because they either go to industry, they're going to these different teams where they have a higher growth ceiling, not because they don't like practice, but because obviously there's a financial component. They're trying to grow as well and be capable of retiring comfortably and living their lives, financially stable. And oftentimes that just doesn't happen with technicians in our current setup. And so, like you said, even in the brick and mortar, the ability to possibly create one of these teams as an outreach group for your clinic. They can go see those older pets in the home. They can do that laser therapy that maybe you're doing in an off room, and have a whole day where they run that out, or 2 or 3 days, or do some of these different treatment options that we discussed. And ultrasound at home requires a lot less sedation. There's no noise. It's not stress. There's no buildup as they get to the office. They wait in the car, they wait in the waiting room. There's dogs barking in the background, there's cats yelling, there's loud noises, banging. And so by the time that you're trying to get them quiet and calm to accomplish something or do something, a lot of times there's just a lot of stress. And obviously not every clinic's going to be set up to pull this off, but there's so many instances where something like a technician team that could just be this adjunct to your brick and mortar practice, let alone for us, it's just the core component of how we build things. There's so many ways to do it. And yeah, it obviously excites me. And then there's so many different ways that this allows them to get paid and stay in practice, because 2 ways, right? They get the ownership of kind of developing their own path. Obviously with Jessica, we've got some of these tools, but let's say, we've worked a little bit and dabbled into nutrition. If she got more interested there, she'd be able to use, something like Healthy Pet Connect and work there. Little shout out. I don't know if they're here or not, but, and be able to utilize their Bluetooth scales and be part of a nutrition planning with me, to where she could be part of that monitoring and maintenance team. And not only, make those corrections in a clinic, but it's something different when you can be in the home and you see where they're feeding Fluffy, and, there's Fluffy and there's 7 other cats, and all 7 cats eat out of the same bowl. And there's just such a touch to be able to walk them through it and offer them tools. And Jessica's capable of doing that and building that relationship and being that practitioner that can do there. She's not diagnosing, but she is offering them solutions based on a diagnosis that we know, and helping them problem solve, real time at home. And that's one avenue. If nutrition's the way she wanted to go, you could build it that way. If ultrasound's the way she wanted to go, you could build it that way and give them, that job, that job fulfillment. And then because they're part of your production team, it allows you to create either a bonus structure, or some sort of direct production structure similar to, a ProSal setup that allows their ceiling to elevate as they grow and as they develop their own clients and their own relationships and really become part of that production, that team. And I truly believe that if that's the case, a lot of technicians would not be leaving practice, and we'd have this constant turnover underneath, trying to replace them and then retraining them and then creating those skills. but we could empower the best of the best to stay and really become that driving force for the practices, because they're getting some ownership in it. They really get their own track. They get to develop their skills. They really get to develop their own mindset and what they want to do. And then you can build into it, and it just becomes like a core pillar of that practice. And it's going to allow every practice to do this in a different fashion, because it's also, every technician is going to have their own thoughts and interests. And so, yeah, I think from not only employee retention, job fulfillment, like that positive culture, they're excited to come to work. They get to do something that they really love, and they get paid appropriately for it. And it allows us to find a way to create that pay structure that lets them grow to where they want. Because in the same respect, they get freedom in their calendar as they can schedule appointments. And it's one of the things with that team and with our staff in general, we don't have a PTO ceiling in any way, shape, or form. If they need time, they take time. We expect it gets used, responsibly, and scheduled as efficiently as they can. But, you need an appointment, or Jessica's got a daughter. And there's days where, Chloe calls and get in something sick, and she can rearrange her schedule and make it work to where they can fit kind of her hours, even if it's not our perfect hours. She may come in a little early to accomplish an appointment here, go a little late. And she gets that freedom to do what she needs to do with Chloe, with herself, when it comes to scheduling, and the assistants as well. We kind of are able to use them as a fluid trained team to hop in and out as needed, so that they can accomplish what they need as well. But it really has been great for her to do that. And again, I think you can replicate it everywhere.
I think there's so much value to exactly that. There's a huge salary component as well, which we can touch on that, because I know when I first pitched this webinar to you, and you kind of went on to describe how, I think it was that day, you had 7 additional clients that Jessica had seen that you wouldn't have been able to see because of your packed schedule, which, obviously is going to increase revenue, but it's also going to increase client retention, because those clients that you wouldn't have been able to fit into your schedule would have potentially gone somewhere else, or gone to urgent care, or, not felt like they were a priority to your practice, where you have Jessica as that touch point, that person that can reassure and can increase that client satisfaction rate as well.
Yeah. That's like we talked about. Right now with our current calendar, we're utilizing a practice scheduling software by the name of Kumba that we're currently working on integration with Digitail as well. And it helps with kind of our route management and scheduling. But with that system, because of some of the location-based things and just our calendar, I think we're booked out, 3+ weeks, sometimes up to a month. And surgeries are booked, I think into November at this point, something along those lines. But with our technician team, they're our urgent group. And they kind of fill that gap between, we're lucky to have a very, very good ER care here, urgent care that's open 24 hours, and a fantastic team. But if our clients were repetitively having to go there, it starts for them to question our availability and our interest in treating them, and how much of a part of our family they feel, right? Or how much, I guess, commitment to our practice they feel. And Jessica really helps us double down on our commitment to their care. And obviously there's still aspects of things that we would send out, but because they know that she's that solid hand of our practice, they very much feel like they've been prioritized. Even if I can't get there, because she becomes that individual practitioner, but also that translation through to me. But we put someone in front of those folks. It's not just a phone call. It's not just an email. She's able to get there and be a presence for them. And oftentimes that's the more important part than anything. They just want to, feel heard, or they want to make sure that their pet is seen and cared for. And she can be that presence for them, which is fantastic. Yeah, I think the other component of this is I do talk about community care a lot. It's one of the things I truly believe in. And so we will refer and send and do all that. But obviously, community care only works if you're still open. And so we need to definitely, keep our clientele as well, and make sure that they feel like we are hearing them and available when they need us. And she allows us to do that.
Definitely. I think I mean, obviously, we're talking about, increased client satisfaction and retention, increased revenue. But obviously, the main goal at the end of the day is that the pet is seen, the pet is getting the medical care that they need, and their quality of life goes on, right? So
Correct.
I think that's a huge thing. I know I love the pictures that you sent over. I'm gonna share my screen again with the collage that I put together because you can see how happy Jessica is, and you can see how comfortable and happy the pets are in their own home getting the treatment. I love this little, I think he's little Jack Russell on his back getting the ultrasound. Like this just speaks volumes to me.
That is, so Kim is on the floor next to her. That's one of our assistants. She's now doing some remote work for us as well. That is her pit bull Frankenweenie mix of a dog by the name of Xena. And Xena is a terror at the vet office, a terror at the vet office. Like Xena is muzzled, and Xena is the sweetest dog on the planet until you do the wrong thing in a vet office. And, you can see here, there's no sedation on board. She's barely getting restrained. Kim's petting her belly at home, and they're doing ultrasound training on her, and she could care less, which is, part of why we love what we do and getting to offer it in this fashion. And Jessica, you can tell it's something she definitely likes. If you see a couple of those pictures, Jessica will probably be mad because I don't know that we got approval for all of those based on some of the smiles that she has. Jessica's obviously fantastically photogenic. And hates being photographed. So, yeah.
I love it. I just like the fact that you can see how happy she is and how content the pets are. And like I said, I think that speaks volumes.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things that we haven't kind of dived into quite yet is the culture that you have at WoofDoctor with the staff. Now, obviously, we've talked about job satisfaction and client retention satisfaction, but how you manage to create this culture of empowerment and support and camaraderie at your practice.
Yeah, so I'm really lucky in that I've had some really good hires. I mean, we definitely believe in hiring talent, oftentimes, regardless of if we have a position for them or not. We are very intent on trying to keep our ear to the ground for just good people, and then kind of figure out where to go with them after that. And some of that is also based on their input. Again, I think Jessica was kind of my first example of that. She was such a good she was one of the best technicians I've ever worked with, and at the time wasn't licensed. She had gone through school, but had just struggled with that test a little bit. And we developed her, and we really put a lot of work into getting her licensed because I knew her ceiling was so high, that we really tried to help her along. I mean, I want to say we took about 4 years to get her licensed, figured out where the issues were. And once she got a little bit of confidence in her ability to take those tests, and we gave her that support and that backing and the time off to study and what she would need, she passed it with flying colors. And so from here, she's able to kind of hit the ground running. And she's just kind of the first example of some of that. We have a fantastic practice manager in Katie. And that was a hire kind of prior to us really being 100% ready. We were looking for maybe somebody part-time and remote. And we stumbled into, I guess Katie stumbled into our lives. We stumbled into hers, looking for a change. And she's been, again, another champion for us, another driving force. And so I think that's all part of how we do that. We've gotten really good assistants this way, and kind of developed our team based on who we had and when we had them, and regardless of need. And then we have a lot of freedom within our system and the way we work. We really try to treat the team, I guess, with that they're mature individuals and that they don't need babysat, right? And if somebody doesn't fit in that network and they take advantage of us a bunch of times, that has happened, then, we will head our separate ways at that point. But our team knows that we trust them. We lay out, kind of network things that need to be accomplished, more as a project base. Obviously, there are certain times where we have appointments and we need to be fulfilling those appointment times and heading to those. But we're not looking over their shoulder throughout all of it. We give them that control to, again, empower them to control their own day. And I know they enjoy, Jessica and Megan, the technician that rides with her predominantly, really enjoy their time together because it's their day, it's their own schedule, and they kind of get to control what they need. Megan is currently pregnant, and so the ability for her to schedule appointments as needed. We don't question those things. We really try to give them the time they need to see those appointments. Middle of the day, it's not like an OBGYN is open at 8 o'clock at night. There's no way to rework those things. And she needs the ability to go to those appointments. I've had a bunch of medical issues over the years. Like I said, I've dealt with some cancer component of things. And so I think part of that, my understanding of maybe how that was handled previously by different teams, I didn't always love, and so we really try to give people the freedom to do what they need and not worry about managing a sick day here. Well, you don't have that, you got to take that from your PTO. We want them to take time off. We really want them to feel refreshed. We really try to find ways that when, like, even Jessica, she was able to take a week off. She normally takes a week off in July. We really don't want them looking at anything or calling in or checking, even though she's a component of our team and a practitioner for us, essentially, in that mid-level, to really be able to step away and enjoy her time and come back refreshed. Katie was in Montana, I think 2 weeks ago, and she's a little like me and has the inability to put work down at times, and was, on at random times. And I just had to keep yelling at her to get off and, like, go enjoy herself and have that. We really want people to have that ability, and not worry about the paycheck component of things, and that they're not going to be able to take that time because if they can't pay their rent. And that's not our goal. Our goal is to really allow them that freedom to continue to be, refreshed. Our industry is obviously going through also a very challenging time in regards to, as I'm sure everybody on these calls know, suicide prevention and awareness and concerns, and our inability to step away and separate, our emotions sometimes from those of our patients and our clients, and the stressors that we all obviously feel day in and day out, and maybe not being allowed to process those appropriately or take that time for our own mental health. And we really try to set our team up to have the ability to do that when they need it. And it's really a core component for us.
I think it comes down to a matter of, like, mutual respect almost, which sounds a little bit odd because it seems obvious, but I think sometimes in our industry it can be difficult with workplace cultures, and I've experienced it myself in the 20 years that I've been in vet med. And I think that it is a big shift that I've seen even just within the last year, that a lot of practice owners like yourself are really prioritizing a positive work culture and empowerment and mutual respect. And I think it's a huge part of the puzzle of keeping people in this industry and helping combat that burnout and that suicide prevention that you spoke about. So I think that it's definitely something that's worth having a conversation about and keeping on the forefront of everybody's minds as well.
Correct. Yeah, I think that, the industry itself has been such a top-down management structure for a long time. And obviously there's got to be a mutual respect there in front of clients, right? I don't necessarily want to be introduced in certain situations as just Doug, right? In that, in front of a client, that definitely can sometimes, I guess, demean my profile to them. And there's oftentimes that I need to have that ability to kind of step up, and they view me in a different manner, right? But to our staff, I'm Doug, right? That's to our assistants, our technicians, and they understand that, again, in front of clients, there's going to be different nomenclature to be utilized. But in our team, I think we try not to have such a hierarchy. And it maybe at times gets a little muddied, and it's hard to navigate, but I think that's because it's a newer approach. That I think a lot of you, if you look at, a lot of Fortune 500 companies and a lot of your big groups are really trying to change some of that dynamic as well, and minimize some of that direct top-down management style, because it empowers and your people, and lets them know that, yeah, you trust that they're going to just be on the right path, do the right things, and stay consistent, get their job done. If you assign things, they're going to do it in a reasonable manner. We a lot of times even let them set, dates in regards to like, hey, we want to do this project. We have regular meetings. We try and run at least one full team meeting once a month. And then we'll have check-in meetings with individuals as needed. But at those meetings, they have full input. We'll assign projects based on need, or even ask for volunteers for projects, and they'll set due dates for us that we can kind of give them in that runway to make sure that they don't feel rushed on things, but we can kind of discuss realistic dates. And because they have ownership in making those decisions, it also motivates them to accomplish those goals because there's an ownership. They take control of those projects for us. And I think, yeah, if you can just, as we've, I guess maybe beat a dead horse with the word, but empower them to do those things. We haven't had to keep tabs on a lot of folks. And obviously with our structure, we're not in a building together. We're not able to watch one another. We're not able to see what the other person's doing, but we trust that they are accomplishing what they need to do. And the results have so far spoken for themselves.
I think kind of going back to what you were talking about before, because it's the second time I've heard it this week, where kind of the fact of the matter is now that new vets are, being headhunted even before they've graduated, and they're being offered these huge salaries and these huge signing bonuses. And they are, and coming from myself, who's worked in emergency medicine as well with new grads, and it's a very different type of mentality with vets versus technicians. Whereas vets come out of vet school and they're just like, okay, here you go, practice. Whereas technicians come out of, whatever certification that they have accomplished, all of the training that they have, and at least in my experience, they're almost treated like they need to be babysat. They need to be kind of policed, is kind of a better word. Whereas, like you said, they're most of them are fully capable of doing these things, and as long as you can find ways that fit in with the legislation and the governing bodies' dictations, there's really no reason why they can't be out there doing these types of appointments and having these types of relationships with clients and getting this type of job satisfaction as well. So I think the entire philosophy that we've kind of gone over today, I think that's really the basis of it, and utilizing all of the technical advances and all the technology that we've discussed to support that. Is there anything that you had wanted to kind of fit in? We've got 15 minutes left, and I did want to kind of open it up for questions as well. But if anybody has any questions for Dr. Doug, just pop them in the chat and I can interject with them. But was there anything else that we haven't covered that you thought maybe you wanted to chat about?
I think you just actually kind of highlighted the technician component of things from, coming out of school. And yeah, you look back now, yeah, it doesn't seem like a lot of time, but I've been at this now a decade, and which is wild to think about. And yeah, when I remember coming out, it's not so long ago that I can't remember the mindset and what I was feeling in that regard. And yeah, you're just kind of, especially in some of the practice that I was at, the second surgery I ever did was a full splenectomy at 10 o'clock at night on my own as I was running the urgent care. There's no one else in the building. And there's oftentimes with our technicians that we're able to onboard them appropriately, but also, yeah, they end up being kind of babysat for just these extended periods of time, rather than developing, these plans for them that allow them to grow, obviously within the skills that we need initially, but then to also find these interests and develop alongside you, kind of within your practice. And the nice thing with what we're doing and how we're trying to utilize these techs, as they get those interests, you can really start them early into it so they can grow with the practice. And then again, kind of take control of their own little branch of the practice that you can, continue to develop and invest in as much as the the technical component of things, like the tech that we use. We spend all this money on that. But that $60,000 ultrasound is nothing without a skilled technician that's learned how to use it and that we've developed and we've trained. And now that's just a tool for us to use. And we invest in that kind of stuff all the time. So we got to find ways to, invest in these techs, and really that education component, that continued education component, and not just a CE here and there where it may be something new and they may try and bring something into the practice, but I would say, actually developing these tracks similar to the labs and things, the wet labs that you're now seeing at these different conferences, finding these tracks for them to really be able to continue to develop their skills. And there's not a lot out there at this point, but things like OnCura and finding those avenues. I think one of the big ones that for a lot of folks are, obviously would be like the canine rehab, that development. I think that's one of the things where a technician truly gets ownership. And we saw some of that. And Jessica, for years, we talked about that and that possible potential for her. I don't know that the rehab was something that really intrigued her, but I think the ownership component and her getting her own clients and really having that was always something that interested her. And now that we found things that she gets to do and she's out kind of driving around and in between appointments, she can kind of listen to her music and vibe and really have that downtime before getting into a front of a client and doing her thing and using her tools and all her skills. Yeah, she comes home at the end of the day and she's pretty happy and pretty pleased. And I think we need to find more of those type of maybe even mid-level practitioner. I think things like the canine rehab technicians, we're utilizing her as almost a veterinary ultrasonographer. Again, she's not making diagnosis, but we're able to filter her results to a boarded radiologist and have results within a day, sometimes even sooner, depending on need. But finding those ways to put her in the driver's seat and any technician in the driver's seat, if that was nutrition, if that was, utilizing the laser as part of a integrative medicine team, as part of that adjunctive therapy. As you get the docs there, they can do acupuncture and then utilize somebody like Jessica to help with those in-between treatments, and continue that care. And I think no matter what avenue we're on at this point, no matter what specialty we're in, there are just ways that we can find a track that they can own, and be a critical component and a producer for our teams, and a major contact point for our clients.
Mm-hmm. And just being able to have the option to think about what is of interest to them, what area do they want to really pursue. And there's so many, like you said, like with the rehab component and senior pet management. I know so much of what I did in regular practice was focused on, the kidney insufficiency, sub-Q fluids, and the injections, cartridge injections, like all of these things. Just, you build a relationship with your clients, and I loved doing that. But that is something that a technician can fully be empowered to do and have that relationship and essentially execute all of those appointments. We did get one question. David Deffenbach has said, thanks for all of this information, Dr. Doug. Do you find that brick and mortar practices refer clients to you, clients who might prefer home care for general practice or hospice, for instance?
We have referrals all the time. We get them consistently. We get them constantly. Obviously, end of life care is a big component of what we do. So from my side of things, in South Carolina, technicians are not able to do euthanasias. I know in some states they are, depending on where they're at. But for the end of life care, they definitely send out a lot of referrals for us for that. Hospice care is definitely something that we do get referrals for. I think clients come searching for us more often. I think they have a really tough, maybe that one tough appointment where it's been a challenge to get him into the vet, and they have one really rough appointment trying to get him into the car or get him out of the car. It's just a really poor experience from a maybe even mobility component. Or we have, sometimes the little old ladies or the little old gentleman that, has the 100-pound lab that's overweight and they can't get him in the car and they can't get him out of the car. And so we have them sometimes come searching for us as well. But we have really good relationships with our local clinics as well. We utilize them as part of our practice. There's plenty of things we don't do. And we have referral lists that we'll send directly to clients, kind of highlighting what some of our local practices can do that we can't. And so they also become resource points for even our clients. And we talk about it. I have clients all the time that'll apologize because they went to a different clinic. They're like, I'm so sorry, but we couldn't get in with you and we were panicking. But that's not a problem. It's community care. And we know that there's doctors locally that doctor's really good at this type of surgery, or she sees exotics a little more than I do. And she's definitely a knowledge point for us to utilize. And so we kind of will also refer back and try to be that sometimes even middleman. And we've seen really positive results with practices locally referring to us as a result, because we also try to be an extension of their practice and referring back to them. There's plenty for everybody to experience and see. And as long as these clients are getting treated somewhere, then it's just a matter of making sure that they feel like you had talked about, feeling kind of cared for. But it's been a major component of our practice. And it's something that Jessica now allows me to do more of, because I'm more readily available than I even was before. So when we can kind of get that established, and then she gets to keep a lot of those hospice patients, like you talked about, she's very critically involved in different injections, fluid therapies, stuff that I can't get to 2 or 3 days a week. That's she does a lot of laser therapy. She does a lot of Silencia injections in cats now. On recurrent basis. We're really excited for the new canine version of that's coming out this fall, that you in Canada have already had for a period of time. Yep. And Australia and Europe have already had, but that's all going to be stuff that we use in her kind of grab bag as well.
Yes, definitely. Okay, we had another question. Joe Frost says, I so agree with you about the brain drain situation with veterinary technicians. We lose far too many excellent colleagues for greener pastures. This is going to be a difficult to answer, but how much money do you think techs need to make it worth it to stay in the profession for 10, 20, or 30 years?
So I think that's a relative answer. One, I'm not an accountant by any means, but two, I think a lot of it's going to be quality of living in their respected area, right? So I think those numbers are really hard to say specifically, because I think cost of living, you know, like if you're talking even where you live, right? I'm going to just kind of pick on Heather because I know the area of the country she lives in Canada. You know, like where she's at, I believe, are you in Hamilton, if I remember that correctly? Yeah. So like Hamilton versus Toronto, like you're not that far apart, but the cost of living between those two areas is going to be drastically different, right? And you're only an hour down the road. You know, so I think all of that plays a huge factor, but obviously what we're charging as a veterinary practice also reflects that, if you're in Toronto versus if you're out in a more rural city or smaller city. And so for us, like, I'll kind of do some basic numbers here. You know, Q2 of this year, we've really got Jessica off the ground in January, full-time trying to do this. And I say full-time, she's running 3 days a week for us. And in Q2, that was fully going, and we saw a 50% revenue increase from Q2 of last year. And the only real change, obviously, was her and her team. And so what it allows me to do is create, you know, some production measures for her, and she can control as much of that as she wants based on the skills she develops and the amount of these appointments she can see. It's going to be a percentage, just like a ProSal setup. With a lot of these, you know, with a lot of these new vets that are coming out and that, you know, I've worked on in the past, that she has some influence and control on that. And by her being some of the practitioner component of this, you know, I, at least from what we see locally right now, before we even get into the ProSal component, you know, I would say Jessica's about 20% above where most other offerings are coming through at the moment, on her just base salary. Because of the way that we utilize her. And I've always been very upfront with her about what she wanted and where she thought she needed to be. And we have those conversations. And I think that may even be part of the core component of this, like having that conversation, especially with your really good technicians before they're even starting to look elsewhere, somebody that, you know, on your recruitment that you're able to kind of envision being with you for a long time. I always envisioned Jessica with me for a long time. She was with me 5 years before this practice and 3 years with this practice. And I've always been upfront and said, hey, Jessica, like, what are your goals? Where do you think you need to be? And then together we've worked towards finding ways to get her there. And we're not there yet. We're continuing to try and grow that, but I think her being part of that is critical. And so that would be kind of, I guess, how I would answer that, is you probably need to include them in that conversation, find out where they want to be, what they envision, and then create a plan to get them there, and be very upfront with, are we there yet? Can we get you there yet? No. Okay. But what are we envisioning? And if they're happy with that, I have a feeling that they're going to be around for a long time. So far, I've been lucky enough that has been a proven track record. So hopefully we, fingers crossed, continue down that.
Definitely. I think you answered that completely perfectly. Because it depends on your geographical location. It depends on, the kind of the going rate around you too. And I think the big thing is really just having that conversation, having like a growth plan, having that kind of goal to work towards, where it is a conversation that you're able to have. It's not, it's not just, you know, waiting around for your yearly review if that happens, or having to go to the practice owner or your DVM and say, here, you know, I need a raise because the cost of living and all of this. Or a lot of the Facebook tech groups that I'm on, people are all fired up because new hires are coming in at a higher salary than what they're making, and they've been at these practices for 3 to 5 years. So I think just having an open and honest conversation and working towards bettering their quality of job satisfaction and financial stability is really the key to working collaboratively as veterinary professionals and empowering and supporting each other. That'd be my 2 cents, anyways. All right, so we've got like 4 minutes left. I didn't see any other questions. Let me take another pass here. David Deffenbach said, thank you for the response. I love the 2 ways referrals where you and GP specialty are part of the community. Magic happening in South Carolina. Yes, I do love that too. It's less about competition, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we just want to make sure that the pets are being cared for. And we want to make sure, especially if we have that relationship with our clients, that they're being supported even when we're not able to help them. Or if there's someone out there that's better to help them with this specific issue, why wouldn't we be referring each other, right? Like it's definitely, like you said, about community. And I love that that's another one of your philosophies too.
Yeah, we actually had I think it's been a few months, but we try to have regular conversation with some of the other local mobile vets as well. There's one down in Savannah, which is about 45 minutes from us, and there's actually one that started a year and a half after we did, kind of in a neighboring town, and we cover some of the same territory. But like we've had sit down dinners with our management team and their management team, and just got to know one another. I mean, there's plenty of conversations to go around. And people to, you know, clients for both of us. We obviously, just like she's doing things a little different. She's onto a second veterinarian, and she's actually kind of moved into a Savannah a little bit. But none of us are ever wanting for appointments at this point. I think if you do a good job, and in your own philosophy, and you really believe in it, and you're passionate about it, and your people are passionate about it, you're always going to have people walk through the door. So, and on ours, I guess I'll be calling us to drive to their house, because yeah. But
definitely. One more question. Roland says, where are your surgeries performed?
Yeah, so our LaBoy is set up with full dental table. We have a full surgical suite in there. We have multiple anesthetic machines. So we do our surgeries at the client's home. Typically, we have some setups with them, either hopefully not on the street. Occasionally it occurs, but normally we try and at least tuck off the street and into a driveway right there. Occasionally that doesn't happen, but very rarely. More often it's in a back neighborhood if we are on the road. And yeah, we're right in front of the client's home. We run off of a generator when that needs to happen, and we're able to do everything there. So we have our full team there. As of now, I pull Jessica in we run those Tuesday, Thursday mornings. And Jessica's part of that. Now the goal is we're actively hiring to kind of get her replacement for that, so that I can push her out 5 days a week to run her technician team that way, and then start the next transition into this next technician team, where that individual can step in with me on those surgeries and start pairing with me as an assistant some days, so that I can learn them. I can learn how they work. They learn how I work. And then hopefully sometime next year, kind of take over the role that Jessica's been experiencing with part-time tech team, part-time surgical technician. But yeah, we're able to do that right there. And it's absolutely one of the things I love about the mobile world, because I'm able to get these clients right in the morning, take care of their pets. And when they wake up, when that dog is awake or that cat is awake, I'm immediately able to get them into the home. They are so much more comfortable. The recoveries are so much less violent and stressed. More often than not, they snooze away the afternoon and wake up refreshed the next morning. I'm not needing extra sedation for majority of our patients, because they're at home and they're comfortable and they're on their beds. By the time they're completely aware of what's happening in their surroundings, it was a bad dream. And they maybe have a little surgical suit or a little surgical sleeve or thing on, but for the most part, they don't even really know that anything negative occurred. And we get really positive responses from our clients as a result.
I can definitely see that. I've never had the privilege of having my pet have surgery with a mobile vet, but I have enlisted a mobile vet to come in for humane euthanasia for a lot of my senior pets. I had a brilliant idea of getting a bunch of dogs at the same time, and they've all slowly passed over the last year. And it is so amazing that mobile vets exist and are out there, are able to treat the animals in their home, because that's where they're happiest, that's where they're relaxed, and that really embodies everything that that we want for our clients.
Yeah. Yeah. Luckily, I'm actually in this room out here is where most of the dogs spend most of their day. And luckily, they have not made a peep throughout all of this, which has been fantastic. But all of my senior dogs, because I have two 10-year-olds, a 9-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and they are just napping away. And it is one of the nice things that we get to see. This is what most of our appointments look like by the time we're done and finished. So it's exactly kind of what we replicate in how we work, which is great.
Yes, yeah, and we can't forget the cats too, because I also have a cat that likes to have explosive diarrhea anytime we try to take him anywhere. So that is another reason why I love mobile vets.
Yeah. And again, the technician component of things in a lot of other states, like, again, we have to kind of unfortunately work within the confines of how South Carolina works. But in other states, like, admittedly, I would make sure if I was kind of going to do this in a state where the technicians had a little more freedom, which I'm hoping to get to, like a lot of vaccines and a lot of those type of appointments would end up happening with Jessica. I'd obviously have to make sure that I had an annual appointment at least once a year and I got my hands on them to maintain, that patient client veterinary relationship. But there's no reason oftentimes that I have to go and give an intranasal bordetella or to give a distemper. It's definitely a pain point for us a little bit. Jessica's allowed to, give injectable medications, IV draws, blood draws, injectable like IV medications. She's not legally in South Carolina allowed to give a intranasal bordetella without me on board and present. So I think there's a lot of legislative catch up that also needs to happen to really allow us to use them to their full potential. But I think as these kind of things become more common, which I'm very confident will happen, that a lot of that will occur. And I'll also start being, as I'm always very vocal. So I will continue to be vocal for them as well.
Yes, definitely. I think there's a lot of wiggle room for change. And I think that is definitely needed. Someone like yourself, like DVMs, looking to change those laws and to give technicians a little bit more power in those states. Yeah, it's pretty silly, at least in my opinion, that you can't give an intranasal bordetella.
It's pretty goofy. And in South Carolina, clients are allowed to buy a couple of those vaccinations at local feed and seeds and give them themselves. She's allowed to give that to her own pet as a non-veterinary professional, but she's not allowed to do that as a veterinary professional for other people's pets. So does not make a lot of sense, but here we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are trying to make positive change. Exactly. All we can do is try to do better, the next day. And I think that's kind of why, Digitail and yourself and WoofDoctor On Wheels has maintained this amazing supportive relationship with each other, because it's all about trying to do better, trying to make change that is positive in the world, trying to support veterinary professionals, support patient care and animal quality of life. And I am just very thankful that we have you in our corner and that you are doing what you're doing and empowering your technicians and spearheading change in South Carolina. I thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking part in this webinar. I think this has been wonderful. It's been great. I hope that everyone got a lot out of it. We will be sending out a recording of the webinar probably early next week. So watch your email for that and stay tuned for our next webinar. Thanks so much, Doug.
Oh, not a problem. If anybody has any questions for me directly, they think of afterwards, obviously Heather has my contact info. Happy to answer anything that may come along your desk, or questions or problems that you may need help with. Always, again, it's community care. And, I truly, truly embrace that and believe that. So if anybody needs it, feel free to reach out. Heather's got all my info.
Perfect. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We're going to call it for today. Hope everyone has a wonderful evening.
All right. Thanks for having me, Heather.
Thanks.